President Joe Biden has officially signed the so-called Inflation Reduction Act into law. This is the legislation that, of course, included the massive handouts to fossil fuel companies and provided some funding to respond to the climate emergency. Everyone's been celebrating it because it's the most funding Congress has ever allocated to respond to climate change. But I do want to remind you that that's an incredibly low bar, since this country has been pretty abysmal in regard to responding to climate change appropriately. Now, what really stood out about this signing ceremony was Biden doing a kind gesture for the very person who derailed his entire agenda. Let's watch. So for those of you who might be listening to the audio version of the program, Biden gave the sign that he used to sign the Inflation Reduction Act to conservative Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, who made sure that there were all these little goodies in the bill for fossil fuel companies, while also simultaneously stripping the bill of most social spending programs that would actually materially benefit ordinary people's lives. He got a kind gesture in response to that, and he was asked about that kind gesture. Let's see what he had to say.
And what's your response to President Biden giving you the pen that he signed the bill with?
It was a nice gesture, a very nice gesture.
I hate all these people. That's really the only takeaway here. And it's not just out of nowhere, it's because of what Manchin succeeded in, which is basically doing away with the possibility of paid family leave, doing away with the possibility of universal pre-K, doing away with assistance so parents can afford childcare, especially women who want to go back to work, took that away. Did away with the child tax credit, which Biden alleged to want to make permanent, did away with free community and public colleges. I mean, but it's a kind gesture. And look, I think Biden, Cenk, is doing exactly what he wants to do. He's thanking Manchin because Manchin did exactly what Biden wanted him to do.
100% right. So a bunch of things out of that short little video. First of all, that's a nice murderer's row of corporate Democrats.
100%.
The people that have been destroying this country for a long time and enabling the right wing to rise up as they have. So Clyburn's among the worst, Schumer is a total fraud, Manchin and Biden. And Anna's right, throughout their careers, Manchin and Biden have almost never disagreed. So this has all been kabuki theater from the get-go. So when we told you that Joe Biden was going to do almost none of his agenda, we got a wall of disbelief and hate from Washington, both in terms of the political figures, but also the media. Oh, how dare you, he's gonna be FDR 2.0. Now, fast forward to today, and he's done almost 5% of it, and he didn't do 95%. Actually, it's worse than we imagined. We thought he would pass voting rights, or at least half of voting rights. I thought that there was a fighter's chance if we fought super hard on $15 minimum wage, but nobody fought on that, and it turns out we didn't get that. So a lot of the bare minimum we didn't get at all. And so now when we turn around and say we were right, all of Washington has now moved to a new alternate reality. The alternate reality is Biden delivered. Biden delivered almost his entire agenda.
No.
Well, that's just a lie. It's totally unsupported by the facts. Look, Anna already gave you a lot of examples, things that were total and utter layups, like paid family leave, which is like 84% popularity in the country, including 74% of Republicans. I mean, layups. The only people who oppose it are donor class to Joe Biden, Joe Manchin, and the Republican Party. So now, but I'm gonna just pick one example out of the lot. Lowering drug prices, massively popular. The most popular thing in the bill, everybody wants to lower drug prices.
No, but they got that right,
Oh
Cenk?
yeah, and now in the entirety of the Washington media and every Democrat in Washington is lying through their teeth, telling you that they got some portion of that and you should be happy with what they got. No, that portion is 100% trick. It's lowering drug prices on 10 drugs out of thousands and thousands and thousands, 10 drugs. Wait. In the year 2026.
Yes, beginning in 2026.
Beginning in 2026.
Yeah.
You know what that is? That is saying we're gonna lock in not lowering drug prices until 2026, and then we're gonna lock in another 10 years where we only lower drug prices on 10 freaking drugs. It's a goddamn joke. It's meant to deceive you into thinking that they took action when they did the exact opposite. They locked in high drug prices for decades. That's the kind of game that Joe Biden plays all the time and corporate media covers for him. So I don't care about the people who are just as deluded as MAGA. Those are the Democratic establishment ass kissers.
Yep.
So those guys are in a completely different world, detached from reality, where Joe Biden delivered. Oh, you guys aren't happy. Oh, nothing's ever gonna make you happy. What do you mean we're gonna lower drug prices in 5 years on 10 drugs? Maybe, kind of. You guys are a joke. Go kiss his ass, go kiss Manchin's ass. I don't care. There was crumbs that Biden passed, like in terms of solar energy and renewable energy in that bill. There's crumbs that were passed in a couple of different bills, but almost all of them were wrapped in a giant lard of corporate pork.
Yes.
You hand it over to the solar energy companies, but then you also have to hand it off to the fossil fuel energy companies. Lard, and a little kernel for you, and then you send the alternate reality zombies out there to go, it is historic, it is the best thing we could have ever gotten, Joe Biden did his agenda. And then you see that feeble man go, and offer that pen to Manchin, which was almost out of Planet of the Apes.
Listen, if Biden fought like hell for his own agenda, and we saw that fight and he just couldn't get Manchin to play ball, my commentary would be different in that I wouldn't be as critical toward Biden. But Biden handing Manchin the pen the way he did is just another example of how he refused to apply any pressure to Manchin or Sinema. Nothing but carrots, nothing but complimentary commentary during his press interviews and his public appearances. There was never any hardball by the president to ensure that more of his agenda actually came to pass. And that's the reason why I'm frustrated, because one can't help but think that Biden didn't really want these things. That Biden loved the fact that there were convenient excuses both baked into the system and also within the Democratic Party to essentially put a stop to what he purported to be in favor of. Because I've seen and I have read about previous presidents fighting for their agenda and succeeding despite all odds, including LBJ, getting a Civil Rights Act passed, even when members of his own party were against it. He did everything he could because he actually wanted to pass it. And guess what? He succeeded. We didn't see that fight from Biden. And look, I've talked about this a billion times because the only good thing that we've seen in this Inflation Reduction Act, which is honestly just the name by itself is laughable. This is not an Inflation Reduction Act.
It has nothing to do with it.
But nonetheless, okay, the part that even some progressives have been celebrating is the money that will be allocated to responding to climate change. Except there's a massive catch. We've talked about that catch, and it has to do with allowing for fossil fuel companies to rake in more money, to do more drilling. And here's the example. Here's the CEO of Valero, a fossil fuel company, okay? The legislation whose scope and ambitions were dictated by fossil fuel industry ally Senator Joe Manchin includes components, quote, that are helpful to our business. Rich Walsh of Valero said during the fossil fuel giant's earnings call on Thursday. This is an older quote, but yeah, so that's what he said in response to it. And the bill, if passed, and it did pass, it just got signed today, would tie wind and solar development to oil and gas lease sales. That language is expected to undermine the Biden administration's plans to expand renewable energy on federal lands and waters, as well as greatly complicate plans to draw down oil and gas production that contributes directly to climate change and the climate crisis. And I mean, the list goes on, okay? So the proposed legislation would block the Interior Department from issuing any wind and solar development rights of way unless it first holds oil and gas lease sales. Onshore, the department would have to offer 2 million acres of federal land for lease annually, or half of all the land nominated for leasing, and hold a lease sale within 120 days of issuing any renewables right of way. Come on, guys.
Yeah. Later, when they write an article a couple years from now saying, well, it's weird, they couldn't do any of the solar energy and the renewable energy stuff in there because it turns out in the bill, you have to actually lease federal land for fossil fuels first. And they'll pretend like no one could have seen it coming.
No one could have seen it coming.
And the Hal Sparks of the world and Democratic ass kissers will be like, nobody knew. Oh, that is an unexpected twist. So instead of getting 5%, we got 0%. And corporations, instead of getting 99%, got 112%. What an unexpected twist in Washington. So look, guys, I mentioned Planet of the Apes, and if you've seen it or if you just watch normal documentaries, you see apes do this. They put out their hand like this to an alpha ape. And humans are in the ape family. And that was Biden, like literally to Manchin. If someone took 95% of my agenda and flushed it down the toilet, I wouldn't be going to them. I would brush up against them at the signing ceremony if I allowed them there in the first place, okay? But instead, Biden is thrilled to get that 5% because he was never gonna fight for it. He never believed in it. I don't care what alternate reality you live in. There are facts about the legislation. There are facts about the policies. Biden never wanted any of it. And so he's thrilled with the corporate pork garbage that he has passed in his term, and that's just evidence of it. Finally, last word goes to one of our members. We love doing the show with you guys. Travel Nurse Dragon made a good point. Manchin might as well keep the pen since he was the only one to get the watered down bill.
That's right. No,
that is a fair point.
Excellent point.
It's Manchin's pen, it's Manchin's presidency, and you see the beta male handing it to him right in front of your eyes. Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.